Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Wicked Naked, Welcome to Wicked Rescue, hosted by Holden Robinson, only on D.T.M.
Tiffany, thank you for the introduction. Hey, everybody. It's been like 4 or 5 weeks since I've come to you live. How have you possibly stood it? Well, this is our spin-off show, Wicked Rescue, and those of you who have tuned in to my Wicked Naked shows, I got to tell you something. I really appreciate that because there's a lot of things you guys could do on a Saturday night. There's a lot of things you guys could do if you look up a podcast and take the time to listen to it, and I appreciate that you chose to share that 55 minutes with us. There's a lot of things going on in upstate New York. We've had a bit of a heat wave, which is kind of nice because now I have a sauna. The only problem really is that it has a couch in it. But, you know, what did somebody say? In 16 weeks we're going to be shoveling snow again. So I guess the heat will take it. A lot of things have happened recently. It's been a busy time since I have chatted live with you guys. Anybody who watches the news, which is most people old enough to understand the news, know that this week was a very difficult week for our lion population. And we're going to devote a lot of tonight's show to talking about these animals who are in serious distress, seriously endangered of extinction. And I'm going to bring on my friend and fellow D.T.M. Wicked Radio show host, Tammy Rosenfeld, in a few minutes here to talk about her take and her opinion on Cecil and how this conversation, this incident, has sparked a lot of conversations that are very, very necessary. I had somebody say to me today, you know, I'm really sick of hearing about Cecil. And, of course, I did the old lock the lips and throw away the key in the interest of not having a family feud. But, it's important to talk about this. And she said, I just wish the news would cover something that's important. But this is important. And I think people around the world are beginning to understand exactly how important this is. It speaks a lot to dignity and integrity. You know, the word legal has been in every single news broadcast and news story about the incident regarding the murder of Cecil. We believed that what we were doing was legal. You know, that's all well and fine. I'm a real estate person. I'm not an attorney, but as a real estate person, I deal a lot in real estate law. Now, what does that have to do with Wicked Rescue, you ask? Not really much of anything, but I'm going to continue to talk about it anyway. Because in real estate law, there are certain legalities. And I said this to someone not too long ago. Legally, these people were just in what they did to you. But there's something more to this. There's something more than just legalities. There is ethics. There are morals. There is integrity. There is dignity. None of which went into the hunt and eventual murder of Cecil. It was a sad day for activists all over the world who are hoping to see a ban on trophy hunting in their lifetime. I think Jimmy Kimmel said it best the other night. You know, how difficult is it for you to get an erection that you have to go out and kill an animal? And somebody else said it just as well. You know, in a sport, typically both parties are aware that they're playing. Cecil didn't know he was playing. There's no sport involved in trophy hunting. You know, sociopaths are defined as someone who has an inability to be empathetic to another creature's suffering. They have no ability to have any emotion toward the suffering of another living thing. Well, I'll tell you something. If that doesn't ultimately describe a trophy hunter, then I don't know what does. You know, whether or not it's legal, let's just think for a moment that Cecil the lion was wounded. He was initially wounded. He wasn't killed immediately. He was tracked for 40 hours. And evidently, this is an exciting thing for hunters. You know, I don't really get this. I have to be honest with you. I don't know if it's simply that it's just not my mindset. Perhaps, guys, I got to tell you something. I don't get it. I mean, realistically, if we did that to a human, if we wounded a human and tracked it for 40 hours, it would be a Criminal Minds episode. This is not normal behavior. It's simply not normal behavior to enjoy wounding something and tracking it for 40 hours. We thought what we did was legal. Really? Why did you destroy the evidence? Why was such effort made to destroy the tracking collar placed on this lion by Oxford University as part of their research project? Why was such effort made to destroy that tracking collar? Once you destroyed the evidence, you knew what you were doing was not legal. And I'm sorry, once you baited and lured this animal, and I have to look at this spelling and hope to get the pronunciation right because I am not a person of African descent. I do not speak any African native languages. I believe it is Hwange National Park, the refugee or the preserve, rather, where this animal was, you can't say housed. It's not like he was in an apartment complex. But you know what I mean, folks. Basically, where Cecil lived, you lured the animal from the protected area, dragging a carcass with your Jeep or whatever you did, into an area where it was legal to shoot him, basically, with a bow and arrow, and clearly, someone who is not a very good shot, unless it was their intention to wound and track. Oh, my gosh. We're back to that again. Guys, I have absolutely no idea what to say about that. And I had a moment today. Children are incredible little creatures. And I'm not saying that to be creepy because, calling them little creatures, but children are incredible little creatures. And I had a moment today with a baby. I don't know if you guys have ever had a moment with a baby, but if you haven't had a moment with a baby, have a moment with a baby. Your friends probably have a baby, your sister might have a baby, your brother might have a baby, the guys down the block might have a baby. Have a moment with a baby because babies are not born judgmental. They're not born necessarily with a propensity for evil. Unfortunately, if you talk about sociopathic tendencies, that may not be true. But for the sake of my conversation, let's say that they are simply not. They grow up in a world that actually does forgive evil. It accepts evil. Evil exists. But I looked into this baby's eyes, and I had this moment with this baby who basically didn't want anybody to hold her, but she suddenly reached for me. And I thought, that's pretty cool, because for a moment I was very special. I was this baby's choice. And I took this little baby, and I told this little baby, when you grow up, I am going to make sure that you can see an elephant and not in a book. I am going to make sure that you can see a rhino, that you can see a giraffe. And I got to tell you something, guys. I'm a little emotional tonight. I'm trying not to cry. But anyway, I looked into this baby's eyes, and this baby looked back at me with a wisdom far greater than someone who was 14 months old. And this baby seemed to know what I was talking about. And I believe I had this child's approval. And that really meant a lot to me. Like, this baby, she's on board with this. She's like, you go, you better take better care of yourself because it's going to take some work. She kind of looked at me like, you kind of look like you're falling apart. I watched you get out of the chair. Take better care of yourself because I'd really like to see a giraffe someday. But I told this little child that I was going to do this for her. And perhaps this incident with Cecil, as heartbreaking as it is, will begin these conversations, not about death threats to Walter Palmer. I mean, believe me, this guy is shivering in his boots right now because let me tell you something. The punishment for poaching in Africa, it is not comfy, cozy, and, camp fed with 3 cots and a cot and a tennis court. They're not quite as kind there. The punishment for poaching is death. I mean, this guy better hope he's not extradited. He's shivering his boots. He ought to be. But if you're going to make a death threat against Walter Palmer, you ought to make death threats and run out of town Billy the dentist for eating a bacon double cheeseburger. Because you know what? It doesn't make the news when Cecil the pig is slaughtered for your dinner. But maybe once in a while it should. but it's starting a conversation. And perhaps because of this, it will grow and it will expand. And I read a blog this afternoon, and it was, there were comments about Facebook and social media. A lot of people think they're the devil. My mother says Facebook is the devil. Well, you know what? I have learned a lot by following various individuals who think like I do, like-minded folks. I follow them on Facebook. I read things that they post, and they post some fascinating material. And I read a blog basically about the disconnect between Cecil the lion and Cecil the pig and Cecil the cow and Cecil the chicken and Cecil the fish, and that the two are not mutually exclusive. And there was an argument back and forth, not on the blog comments, but on Facebook, that, are they mutually exclusive? Are they not mutually exclusive? Well, you know what? It's amazing the blind eye we turn to the overall suffering of our sentient beings. Somebody asked me the other day, just picking on me, I have a chili cheese dog. Do you want to watch me eat it? I said, no, of course not. I said, do you want to go to the slaughterhouse with me and see how it got here? And he looked at me like I was insane, which is appropriate because I probably am. Not so much certifiable, but, a little crazy in the thought process sometimes. There's a vegan in every group. There's a vegetarian in every group, and people roll their eyes. But I also saw another fantastic video this week, and I haven't forgotten Tammy. I'm going to bring Tammy on in a few minutes because we're going to have a conversation about the effects of what happened this week and how conversations and expanding our thought process on this might help innocent animals everywhere. But this video was fascinating that I watched, and it was simply a woman sitting in front of a camera talking for 5 minutes, and she was a vegan. She is a vegan. And she talked about being basically persecuted for being a vegan. And, well, I don't like your vegan opinion. And a lot of people say, well, you know what, Kat, that's just your opinion. But you know what, sometimes, guys, it's actually fact. It's actually fact, and I'll talk a little bit more about this when Tammy comes on. But the fact of the matter is it takes anywhere from 600 to 1,400 gallons of water to produce a hamburger. When we talk about a water shortage, when we talk about the possibility that our oceans will die before the baby I held today will reach retirement age, you know what? That is not someone's opinion. That is based on facts that have been gathered by scientists all over the world. It is a fact that it takes hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of gallons to raise, feed, and basically house all of these cows that basically, eventually come to the dinner plate. That isn't my opinion as a vegan or vegetarian. That is an actual fact. And this video was fascinating. And if you want to watch the video, I actually did post it on my Facebook page. You guys can always connect with me on Facebook. You can send me a message, whether or not you want to send me a friend request. I will happily answer any of your questions. I will engage in conversations, even if you think I'm wrong. I'm happy to tell you all of the reasons that I think I'm not. But when people talk, things happen. And people don't talk anymore. But people are talking more, I think, lately about these advocate situations that are in the news about, animals in distress. And this has really raised awareness. Now, like I said, this guy is shaking in his boots. His dental practice has been closed. He's currently in conversation with, I think it's a Fish and Wildlife corporation or the organization, or I didn't write the actual words down, but the Fish and Wildlife has actually contacted a representative of the dentist. So clearly this guy's scared shitless, as he ought to be, because they're not going to be kind to him if they do extradite him back to Zimbabwe to face the music for what he did. Because I believe he knew what he did was wrong. I believe he knew what he was doing was wrong as he was doing it. And I think it's just another backpedaling situation where, holy shit, I have done something wrong. It's made international news. How am I going to explain and justify this after the fact? Like I said once before, about a week or so ago on Facebook, I think there's got to be a backpedaling speechwriter out there. There really does. Walter Palmer will probably call that. Write me a backpedaling speech. cops who shoot dogs. They